The Toronto Blue Jays were this close to being World Series champions. After an incredible postseason run, Toronto looked like a team that had finally arrived. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was playing like a superstar, the offense was delivering, and the Blue Jays came within inches of bringing the championship back to Canada. And then everything fell apart because somehow the team that was just playing in the World Series now looks almost unrecognizable. And at this point, we have to ask the question, are the Toronto Blue Jays having one of the worst World Series hangovers we've ever seen? Because this isn't a slow start anymore. This team has serious problems. To understand why this season has been so disappointing, you have to remember just how high the expectations were coming into the year. Toronto wasn't supposed to be rebuilding. They weren't supposed to be taking a step backwards. They had just proven that they could compete with anybody in baseball. And when you make a run that deep into October, the expectation is pretty simple. Run it back. You've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. right in the middle of his prime. You've got a roster that knows how to win in October. And after being that close to winning the whole thing, you would think there would be more than motivation the following season. Instead, the Blue Jays have looked like a team that left something behind in October. And that's where the phase World Series hangover comes in. We've seen this happen before. A team plays an extra month of extremely intense baseball, a shortened offseason, pitchers throw way more innings than they're accustomed to, and players have far less time to recover. And mentally, you go from playing the biggest games of your life to starting it all over in April in games that mean almost nothing in a 162-game marathon. That's difficult, but Toronto's drop-off has been especially alarming. Let's start with the lineup, because on paper, you look at some of the names Toronto can put out there and think, how is this offense struggling? The only person that they really lost was Bo Bichette, and they didn't even have him for almost the whole season last year. Vladimir Guerrero is supposed to be the centerpiece, the guy you're building everything around. And when Vlad is locked in, there aren't many hitters in baseball you'd rather have at the plate. But one superstar can't carry an offense for 6 months. Toronto needs production throughout the lineup. They need guys to get on base in front of Vlad. They need someone protecting him, behind him. They need extra base hits. And most importantly, they need consistency. Because that's been one of the most frustrating things about watching this team. One night, they'll look like the Blue Jays we saw in October. They'll put together good at-bats, hit the ball hard, and make you think, okay, here they come. And then the next game, nothing. 3 hits, 1 run, a million runners left on base, and suddenly you're wondering how this is the same team that went all the way to the dance last year. And normally, when your offense goes cold, you can survive if your pitching is dominant. But that's another problem. Coming off a World Series run, especially as brutal on a pitching staff as that one, those extra postseason innings matter. Your starters are making additional appearances. Your best relievers are pitching constantly. Asking your guys to throw in high leverage situations every couple days, then suddenly, a few months later, spring training starts. That's where the physical side of the World Series hangover becomes real. And once the pitching starts struggling at the same time as the offense, well, that's when the losing streak happens. That's when one bad week turns into 2, and eventually, you look at the standings and realize we're not early in the season anymore, and we're still in last. That's what makes Toronto so fascinating to me. This isn't a terrible roster that everybody knew was going to lose. And if that were the case, nobody would care. The reason we're all talking about the Blue Jays is because we've already seen what this core is capable of. They literally just showed us. And that's why the fall off is so dramatic. Baseball history is filled with teams that struggled reaching the World Series. Sometimes they recover, sometimes they sneak into the next postseason, and sometimes that World Series run ends up being the last great moment for that version of the team. That's the possibility that Toronto is trying to avoid, but may end up knee-deep in. Because the championship windows in baseball close way faster than people realize. And once you think, we'll be back, then somebody gets hurt, and somebody declines, and a pitcher leaves, and another team in your division gets better, suddenly 3 years have passed, and you never got back. That brings us back to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. When people look back at this version of Toronto, Vlad is going to be the first person they think about. And after getting that close to a championship, wasting another season of his prime would be brutal. Toronto has already experienced years where expectations were high and the results didn't match them. They finally broke, though. They finally went deep in October. They finally gave the fan base the postseason they've been waiting for. This was supposed to be the beginning, not the end, which is why the next couple months are so important. Can they turn this around? Here's the good news. Baseball is weird. We've seen teams that look completely dead and suddenly win 15 out of 20. A hot month changes everything. And if you're Toronto, you don't need every player on your roster to suddenly become an all-star. You need to put the pieces in the right position and for them to all start clicking at the same time. If Vlad gets hot, if the rest of the lineup starts producing constantly, the rotation stabilizes a little bit, and the bullpens can actually protect a lead for once, suddenly this conversation becomes a lot different. But eventually, you have to stop talking about what this team could do, and they have to actually do it, because every loss matters more now. Every losing streak makes the climb even harder, and every team ahead of them in the standings isn't going to politely wait for Toronto to figure things out. Luckily for them, the American League couldn't get much worse. And even looking at the standings right now, somehow, some way, the Toronto Blue Jays are still only 3 games out of a wildcard spot with over 40 games left to play. It would really only take 2 weeks of really, really good baseball for them to be super in the mix by the end of September, playing super meaningful games against other teams who are right there with them. The American League is so bad, the cusp of getting into the playoffs is just being a 500 team. And they're 5 games back of being 500 and only 3 games back of the third wild card. That should tell you something. The Texas Rangers are dwindling. The Minnesota Twins don't have anybody. The Detroit Tigers are surging, but then you just have the Guardians and the Orioles who just sold off everything. And luckily for the Blue Jays, they just got who could turn into their ace of their staff, Jose Soriano. A great pickup from the Los Angeles Angels who could even lead them to the playoffs as early as this year. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't, because in my opinion, the offense hasn't been good enough and the bullpen has been absolutely awful, pitiful. Are the Blue Jays experiencing the worst World Series hangover ever? Maybe. It's still a little dramatic. If the season continues going in this direction, we might actually have that conversation, because going from playing for a championship to potentially missing the postseason the next year is an unbelievable collapse in itself. Finishing dead last in your own division after going to the World Series is even worse. Maybe the most concerning part isn't where Toronto is right now, it's what happens next. Was that World Series run the beginning of something special, or are we going to look back at it as the one opportunity the Blue Jays had and couldn't finish it? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Are the Blue Jays going to turn this season around, or are they officially cooked? And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more MLB content. I'll see you in the next one.